Hello and welcome to Wedding Wednesdays with Weddings Online. My name is Kelly and I'm a former wedding planner and blogger, and I'm obsessed with weddings. If you're planning a wedding in Ireland, you're in the right place. You're going to learn the tried and tested methods to planning your dream wedding without the added stress. Think of this as your one-stop shop for everything to do with planning your wedding in Ireland. With me, your new wedding planning bestie, and a cup of tea. This is Wedding Wednesdays with Weddings Online. Well, hello, happy Wednesday. Welcome to Wedding Wednesdays with Weddings Online. I'm your host. My name is Kelly, and today we're talking all about how you can look after your wedding guests. So now we've already spoken about ways that you can entertain them. We've spoken about how you can plan a really fun wedding and create an atmosphere where your guests have a really amazing time. But we're going to go a little bit deeper into the details of how you can set the tone for your wedding in a way that looks after the guests. And some of the things I'm going to share are going to be really, really practical, really easy to implement, but they go a long way to helping your nearest and dearest feel like they have all the information they need and that they are looked after and they have the best time at your wedding. So the first thing, and this is the very first thing that you can do, and that is to make it easy for your guests to RSVP. So now there's a little bit of a science to it. There's a bit of an art to getting RSVPs in, and I'll share a few of those things with you. But you have to remember that sometimes guests just forget. Sometimes they think that just patting you on the shoulder and saying, "I'm coming to the wedding," counts as an RSVP. But we know that that does not count. So what you really need to do is to have the process be very simple, and you've got to spell it out for them. So they need to know when to RSVP. They need to know how to RSVP. So that's the information that you would put on your wedding invitation or on your website. You could say something like, "Please RSVP to our wedding before this date by doing this." And the thing that they do could be going to the website. It could be sending an email, sending a text, making a phone call, posting something. Whatever it is that you want them to do to RSVP, make sure that you spell it out so that they know exactly what's required of them. Now, when it comes to the timing, it all depends on whether or not you've sent save the dates. It depends on if you're having a destination wedding or if you've got lots of guests coming from out of town. There are a lot of factors to consider, but the general time frame that you're working with is giving guests about 4 weeks at least to get the invitation and then RSVP. So that would be in a situation where they've already got the save the date's in the diary. If you haven't sent save the dates, you need to give them a lot more time to make sure that they're actually available and then can RSVP and say that they will be at your wedding. Now, here's one more thing you can do to get the RSVPs in, and that is to make it really fun. So you could have the options be yes or no, I can attend or I cannot, or the more formal one, yes, can attend, or no, can't attend. Or you could spice it up a little bit, and your options could be things like heck yes, or see you on the dance floor. Make it fun so that it draws their attention to it and it makes them go, "I really want to RSVP because this is so fun." And why not ask them to do something in addition to just a yes or a no? For example, you could get them to submit a couple of songs that they love dancing to. And you could say, we're building our wedding playlist and we want to know what's going to get you on the dance floor. And then give them a chance, like a line on the RSVP card or something in the website where they can tell you what songs they want to hear at the wedding. A, it's fun. And B, it helps you to know what's actually going to be a fun dance song for your guests. And then you know that they're going to dance with you. Okay, so next thing, when you want to look after your guests, because why wouldn't you? Seat them thoughtfully. Okay, so there are two schools of thought when it comes to seating. So you could either have what's called assigned seating, or you could have what's called open seating. So open seating is when the guests come in and any seat in the house is up for grabs. And then assigned seating is the other end of the spectrum, where you've got a table plan that lays out all the different tables and where each guest will sit. And when the guest gets to the table, their name card is on a particular place setting, which tells them that that is their seat. A lot of people feel like they've got to choose between these two extremes, but one compromise is to assign the table. So you let the guests know that they're sitting at table 10, for example, and when they get to the table, they can pick any seat that they want. So what you have to consider is when you do assigned seating, it's quite a lot of time and quite a lot of work as a couple of thinking through where everybody should sit. And when you do that, if that's the option that you go for, our advice is to be very thoughtful with how you do that. So seat guests with people that they know or people that you think they would get along with. The other option is if you go for totally open seating, it's a great chance for guests to choose who they sit with and where they sit. But on the other end, what can happen is sometimes couples or families do get split up if there's only, 2 seats left at this table and 2 seats left at that table. Suddenly a family of 4 is now split over 2 tables. So the compromise of having an assigned table where guests can choose the seat that they're at means you are putting some direction into this, but you're allowing guests to have a little bit of flexibility with which seat they choose. Now, when it comes to seating people thoughtfully, there are a couple of things that will really help you to look after your guests. Number 1, keep grandparents away from the speakers. The last thing you want is to have your poor old granny sitting right next to a huge speaker with loud music playing during the dancing if she's not going to be on the dance floor. Something else you could do is if you have guests who are hard of hearing or visually impaired, seat them closer to where the speeches and the MC will be so that they can actually feel like they're part of things and they're not in a corner where they can't see or hear clearly. You can also, according to my humble opinion, this is good advice, avoid the singles table. No one likes it. If you have single guests, the last thing they want is to have you draw attention to that fact. So rather seat them with friends, seat them with people that you think they get along with. Don't do that thing where you feel like you want to set them up. If you want to set them up, let them know, but don't put all the single people in one table. They don't like that. And finally, we did talk about this a couple of weeks ago. If you're going to have a kids table, make sure it's for older kids that can be a little bit more independent from their families. And then keep that kids table as close to the parents as possible so that the parents can have their eye on the kids and they don't feel anxious that the kids are somewhere else and they can't see what's going on. Okay, when looking after your guests, here's another thing. This is really, really simple. Think about the things that are important to them. So before you start stressing out about the bouquet toss and the speeches and having everything come out perfectly, just relax, take a deep breath, and start to think about what actually matters. Now, yes, those details do matter, but they don't matter as much as you think they do in the eyes of your guests. So now, here are 3 things that guests do care about. The one is where they sit, which we've just spoken about, so seat them thoughtfully. The second thing is the music. If you're entertaining them in some way, they're going to love it. They're going to be having fun. And so that's why we spoke about having a line on the RSVP card that your guests can fill out, a song that they want to dance to. And the other thing that is really important is the food and drinks. People remember what they've eaten if it's really, really good or really, really bad. So when you choose your venue and your caterer, find things that your guests really enjoy eating and drinking, and make sure that throughout the course of the wedding, nobody goes hungry. So that doesn't mean that you need to have tons of expensive food all the time. It just means that if you know that from this point in the wedding to this point in the wedding, there's a large gap of time with no sit-down meal, that's when you can arrange some snacks or canapes or something like a breadboard or something really, really affordable like a popcorn bar. Doesn't have to be fancy, just has to be plentiful, and your guests just have to know that they've got something they can snack on and they've got something to drink. Next thing, consider the weather. Okay, nobody's expecting you to be the weatherman and to know exactly what the weather will do in 6 months' time or 2 years' time. All guests want is to know that you've thought about the weather. So if it's going to be either really, really hot or really, really cold, or rainy or something, they just want to know that you've thought about their experience. Now, I've seen photos and videos of weddings where it got totally rained out and there was no backup plan and guests were basically outside dancing in the rain and looked like they had an amazing time. And I'm sure they had a really, really good time because they were there with friends and family and it was really special. But most people don't want to be cold and wet. So this is what you could do. If it's summer and it's really, really hot, have handheld fans that guests can use just to cool themselves down. Have water, have indoor or shaded options for where they can be. Don't force people to sit out in the sun if you're not going to give them something to shade themselves or fan themselves. If it's really, really cold, keep them warm. Cozy blankets, hot drinks, heaters. If it's raining, have umbrellas, have a marquee or some kind of a plan B if you were going to be outside. They're simple things. They don't take a lot of time and energy to think through, but they make a huge difference to your guests. So the idea here is not to try and predict the weather, but to just have different plans in place and to be thoughtful with what you choose. Now, we did do a podcast episode a couple of weeks ago just about the different seasons and which one is the best one for you. So if you are still trying to decide when to get married and you aren't sure if you want to embrace all the amazing cozy things of winter or all the amazing outdoor options in summer, take a listen to that podcast. I will link it in the notes so that you can have a listen to that. And now, finally, when looking after your guests, you've got to consider COVID. So now COVID is not as big a deal as it was before. And, loads of people are now getting married and having the large guest list that they have always dreamed of having. So in some ways, COVID's not really a problem, but there are still lots of people who feel really anxious about it, and you may have a number of guests that you are inviting to your wedding who just don't feel very comfortable being in large group settings, and that's totally okay. So these are some things that I recommend thinking through just with COVID in mind. So it doesn't have to be the main focus for you, but it's just something to think about. Firstly, you're going to have to be okay that some guests just simply won't feel comfortable attending a large wedding and they're going to RSVP. No, that's okay. It's not going to be everyone. It might just be a couple of people who it just doesn't suit them. Next thing is you can let your guests know about safety measures that you're putting in place. Don't put that on the invitation, but you could put that on the website. That's what the website is for. And what you can do is you could allow your guests to attend some of their festivities. So for example, if you're going to live stream your ceremony, you could allow guests to watch that from home, specifically if you're getting married in quite a cramped venue that is going to feel very crowded and possibly doesn't have a great airflow system. But those guests might feel much more comfortable coming to the evening reception if it's in a different venue and there's more airflow, or maybe it's outdoors and it just feels a little bit less cramped and more comfortable. You could also just take time to talk to your vulnerable and anxious guests. It gives you a chance to share your excitement, it gives them a chance to ask questions, and you can just put their minds at ease by talking through different safety measures you've got in place and things you're doing to keep them comfortable and safe. And then why not embrace individual items? So we're talking about things like having a smaller cake to cut, but then instead of having slices of cake handed out to guests, you could have cupcakes. It's just an individual thing they can have, and they don't have to worry that it's touched something else. That might not necessarily need to be something you give to all the guests, but maybe you have some cupcakes set aside for those who feel like they don't really want to be touching food that other guests have touched. You could tag glasses so that they don't get mixed up. And hey, while we're talking about glasses, instead of getting everybody to clink glasses for the toast, why not get them to raise their glasses? Simple thing that just helps people to feel like you've actually thought things through and you're looking after them. But again, don't feel like it needs to be the huge priority for you to go through all the different COVID things. Do what's possible, do what's reasonable, and just make sure the conversation is open. So if you've got guests who feel a little bit anxious, just chat with them and see where they're at. Let me summarize what we've spoken about today. So in looking after your wedding guests, make it easy to RSVP. Tell them when they've got to RSVP and how to do it. Next thing, seat them thoughtfully. We spoke about assigned and open seating, but remember, keep the grandparents away from the speakers. Think about your guests who are hard of hearing or visually impaired and seat them close to the action so that they don't miss anything. We also spoke about thinking about what's important for your guests. So that's the food and drinks, it's the music, and it's where they sit. We talked about the weather. Again, don't feel like you need to be the weatherman predicting everything. Just have a good plan in place if it does get super windy and rainy, super cold, or really, really hot. Finally, consider COVID. Thank you for listening today. The Wedding Wednesdays with Weddings Online podcast is produced by me, Kelly, and mixed, mastered, and edited by Glenn Hartman. For more wedding planning tips, advice, checklists, and more, visit weddingsonline.ie.